So you want to learn how to run make.com and you want to do it quick. This video is for you. So I'm not going to go over any of the more complicated stuff. I am just going to stick to the very basics so you can kind of get a feel as to how to use make.com, how it works, and just whatever you need to get started. That's basically all this video is going to be. Stick around, and by the end of this you will at the bare minimum know how make.com runs and how to start your first scenario, and at the very least you'll be able to understand what I kind of do with the other videos that I make on YouTube. So let's go. When you sign into make.com, you are going to see a menu on the left side. So you'll be greeted with the organization page, so the one that you can see right here. You'll be seeing some of our active scenarios, and you will also see your subscription information on here. If you want to change your subscription plan, you can go into this. I would recommend to start to just give it a try. You can of course use the free version. You'll be given 2 active scenarios you can try with and a decent amount of operations. So if you just want to give it a start, you can check that. Afterwards, I would recommend the Pro plan, but you can get along just fine with the core plan as well. Just a quick personal preference over there. But that's essentially all you need from the organizations page. I'm not going to check anything else on here because you really don't need them. Unless you have teams of multiple people, then you could use the Teams tab, but don't worry about that. Again, with the team section, same thing. We're not going to focus on that. Scenarios, right here, is going to be where you spend most of your time. This is going to house all of the scenarios that you make and edit from. So this right here is going to be where you spend like 90% of your time, if not more, on make.com. The templates section is pretty handy. There are some people in the make community that have gone ahead and uploaded some of their little templates, ranging from 2 to 3 modules to a much more complicated scenario. Feel free to take a look at these as well. They're pretty helpful, they're pretty handy. At least just to start off, it'll give you a good idea of how some of these scenarios are put together. Connections and webhooks, these two I'm not going to open because it's just going to show connections and webhooks, basically all the login information and webhooks that you connect with other applications get stored in here. Once you set them up in your scenarios, it'll just get registered and logged in here. The only time you'll ever need to go into these is if you need to re-authenticate, so put in a password again to let make.com sign in, because again, make.com is an automation platform that connects multiple different applications. So for make.com to be able to do that, you have to sign into those applications through make.com, so that make will be able to access and work with it on your behalf. That's essentially what it is doing. It is automating the tasks you would otherwise do manually, right? So these two are where those are going to be saved in. Under more, you'll have keys, devices, data stores and structures. Now data stores and data structures you will rarely ever use unless you're a hardcore automator using make.com and creating complicated data flows in here. Essentially, we won't ever need to do that. You might if you, for very specific instances, but for anything data related, you are probably going to be using another platform. For example, something like a Google Sheet. You can create a table on there and store your information on there, and it'll almost have the same application. At least for us, it's going to be the same application as this. So we'll rarely ever have to use that. And towards the very bottom, Resource Hub. Resource Hub. If you go on here to take a look at if you have any questions regarding specific types of use cases or templates, or they have an academy on here. So anything resource based, they have blogs, they have everything. They're very well acquainted with information. You can take a look at that. So going back to this, that's essentially all you need to know. I guess notifications, one thing. If you ever have any errors or notifications, it'll get pulled up in here. Let me just go ahead and delete this. like to keep it clean. But yeah, we're done with the menu. We're going to go right into the scenario building. So how do you make your first scenario? Using the big purple button on the right, create a new scenario. And you'll be greeted with this big plus button. From here, you are going to start off by adding a trigger. So a trigger is a module. So each of these little applications are called modules. The little bubbles are called modules. So each of these modules are connected to an app or to a function within make.com. So for example, like on here, Google Drive, right? So if you have a Google Workspace account, you can connect your Google Workspace account to make.com, and then you can use its Google Drive features, Google Documents, Google Sheets. You get the point. So a trigger would be your initial or starting scenario. It could be an ACID trigger, or it could be one that's an instant trigger, if I can find something like a webhook. So that's an instant trigger. So the difference between these two triggers are an instant trigger, if you have it connected like this to, let's say, a custom webhook. This one's a custom webhook, so we're not going to do this, but essentially what this does is you can see a little lightning sign on here. So if you click on this, it means that it'll run the scenario immediately. So a trigger that has the instant symbol on it essentially is waiting. It is constantly pinging to see if there's new data coming through that webhook. So if you have this set as switched on, let's say somebody sends an email. As soon as that person sends an email and you receive that email, it's going to start the scenario instantly. And the reason this is different and the reason that matters is because not all modules can be set to do it instantly. So like we went into Google Drive, you could do a download a folder. You could do a download a folder module as a webhook, as the trigger, but you will not be able to have it set to an instant trigger, right? So this one, you would have to set a predetermined time or type of thing. So we'll talk about scheduling later in the video. But essentially, you will first start off with a trigger, right? You can right click and you'll see a few options. I'm going to just delete this right here. And to connect more modules to this, you will click on the little plus button on the right side to add another module, and it's going to show you the menu again. From here, you can add something else, like, I don't know, create a presentation from a template in Google Slides. This is how you would add a module and then add multiple modules afterwards. Okay, and after you do that, what you would do is just connect other modules in there, and once you're done, you can, not even once you're done, so you can title your scenario on here, and it's going to save as that name. So let's do, in this case, test scenario, right? I'm just going to save it as test scenario, and when you're done or while you're working, just click on the save button on the bottom. In this case, we haven't set any of these up, so it's giving us warnings, but we can just save it anyway, so you're kind of seeing what the flow looks like. Once you have multiple of these modules, you might get a little confused. So if you want to save a name or rename these modules, you just simply right click and click rename, and then just give it purpose. Just give it a purpose. Just purpose 1, purpose 2, whatever it is, you can just name it a title, give it a title. The next thing here is a few different things that you can do with these. So let me just go ahead and delete this because I want to show you a simple, quick email thing in here. So I'm going to show you something here. So Gmail, watch emails. So we're just going to make something simple for this video, right? So we'll create this, We can connect this to our email account, because remember when I mentioned with Google Workspace, we can connect your Google Workspace account and you can have direct access to your Gmail as well. Sign into your Gmail, look through your folders, or it could just be, in my case, I'm just wanting to look at my inbox. So just the entirety of my inbox, right? And then click OK, or only unread emails. Okay. And then from now on, after that, you would do a Google Drive, let's say, create a folder. So you'll create a folder in a specific location in your Google Drive, and then you can have the folder's name as, I don't know, the person who sent you this message, right? So sender's name, and so you can do something like client details or something like that. So you can see how you can make the flow based off of the information. You can pull information from previous modules like this. So how I did this again is, when you want to type in information into anything in make.com, it's going to give you this box, right? I'm just gonna open this here so you can kind of see what this looks like. So when you want to type stuff in here, you will be provided this box, and then the star tab is going to show you every linkable piece of data from the modules prior to it that's within its flow. And you can choose from that, and it's going to, let's say in this case when we did sender's name, right? Sender's name. So this sender's name is a linkable piece of information. So anytime a module works itself through, it will get new information under this tag. And then as you can see in here, the written text is the information that's categorized in that tag. So that's what it's going to be replacing with this, right? So that's what it's going to do. And in addition to this, you'll have a few more functions that you can take advantage of as well. So on the second page, you have general functions. So the simple if, switch, the brackets. So if you want to do mathematical equations, or you can do operators. So you could do if, let's say there's a number on it, if that number is equal to something, if that text is equal to something, you can use that. You have math functions, like specific math functions, if you want to get an average, if you want to pass a number, format a number, and you have like the plus minus signs and all of that good stuff. Text and binary. So this stuff is if you want to strip HTML, add like a keyword for space as an empty string or new line. So if you have a whole chunk of text and let's say you want to omit a specific piece of that, or you want to strip a specific piece of information out of it, you can like select the space, like a space in between words, or a new line if there's an extra line, or if there's a new line, then you can specifically target all of that stuff. So we're not going to get too much into that, but you're kind of able to see how flexible you can be with the functions that make.com already has pre-built into it. One of my favorite ones to use is the timestamp. So let's say a perfect example is with this Google Drive folder. Let's say you have the sender's name and you want to put next to it the date that this email came into, right? So you could do a format date, and if you hover your mouse over it, it's going to give you the information as to how you need to write this out. So you're going to be putting the date information in the first column in the first space over here, and then your format next to this, right? So it's represented by the days, D for day, M for month, Y for year. So we could do now to represent like right now, so when the scenario ran, and then you could do Y, M, D. So this is going to give me format date, and what's today? October 31st. So it's going to take today's date and then do 2024 1031, something like that. So you can kind of see how you can use the functions that are already pre-built into make.com to kind of make life a little easier that way. So it's not exclusively just taking data from one place to another. You can also make these adjustments and changes in there. And you can do a lot more complicated stuff too, but we won't go over that today. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is importing and exporting blueprints. So, I mean, I have recently made a video on something like this. I'm just going to give this as an example. So if you wanted to, if you've created a blueprint and you want to export it, you would go down here into this more button, and then you can export blueprint, or you can export this specific blueprint, and then you would go ahead and then type your information, and then it's going to export it as a .json file. You can say I already did this one time before. You can close that. And if you want to import a blueprint, same thing. So if I go back here and I choose to import a blueprint, choose a file, and I'm going to downloads, and I will download my scenario that I built earlier. It's as easy as that. So if you download a JSON file and you want to upload or bring that into your workflow, just click on more, import blueprint, and choose your .json file, and you can bring it right there. And then it's going to showcase itself right in front of you, and then you can go ahead, open it, and just establish your connections, and then go from there. And I forgot how to tell you to establish these connections, so I'm sorry. So in order to create a connection, what you would do is, in this case, you would have to create a webhook, but let me see. When it doesn't give you the option to put a connection in, you just need to go into add, and then there are a few different ways of doing it. Some of them will ask you to sign in directly. Like if I did a Google Drive module, let me see if I can connect this at the very end. Okay, if I did something Google related, if I wanted to add, it's just going to simply ask me to sign in, and then it's going to take care of it automatically. Some are going to have, some will ask you to create a API token or generate an API token on that app in its developer or settings, and then you would copy that and paste it in here to establish the connection. You would do something a little similar with webhooks, but that's essentially how we would connect your account. And remember how I mentioned previously that we have webhooks and connections in here. So these two options, menu options, essentially keep track of all of those webhooks that you sign into and have connections to. Okay, the next one is going to be, I will go over the flow control. So in flow control, you're going to have a few different options. So it's down in the menus right here. So these are very important, I'd say. So the most common one you would probably use is the router. So the router is essentially going to allow you to split your flow into two separate sections. If I had to give you an example, it would be let's say, let me go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to do a Gmail, like watch an email, right? So delete that, watch an email, and then you want to respond, right? So send an email. So you want to send an email, but you want to send, I'll do a clone, so you can clone this, and I'm going to do a router, so you can kind of see, you can kind of get a picture of what I'm doing here. So you get an email, and depending on that email, you want to do, you want to give two options. So based off of a criteria, if this criteria meets this specific situation, send this email. If it meets another situation, you would send this optionally different email. And how, that's basically what you would use a router for. You could use it for that, or you could use it to split a scenario where it's just gonna go this way and then come back and go this way. So you could have it do that as well. It would do that if you don't set a filter, right? So to go over again, we get information from the first module, and passing it through a router is going to split it, so it's going to run this way and then it's going to run this way. But if you want it to just restrict itself to go in either or, then you would set up a filter. And to do that, along the link, you're going to see a little spanner. Click on the spanner and you can, this is where you would unlink or set up a filter. So when you set up a filter, you can do a condition. So in this case, let's say we look at our watch emails, and then we can do sender email address is equal to exists, doesn't exist, or whichever. So let's say it's equal to a specific someone, right? A specific someone at something dot something. And if this is equal to that, if we set that filter, and only if it is equal to that, it's going to send an email. Send this email, email1, rename, email1. Forgive the typos. And if it is anything other than that email, it's going to go and send email2. I hope that explains what the router does. The next thing, the next two slightly less important but you will find useful are the iterator and the array aggregator. So basically what these do is the iterator will take a array of information and split it. It will split it. So it will, let's say you have a table or a data set with 5 different sets of information. Then you would use an iterator to take each of those information pieces and then run with the flow. The array aggregator does the opposite. If you have multiple sets of information coming in, then it's going to take all of them and then list them out into one data package with all of those bits of information, and then lets it pass through. I'll show you 2 examples that I've made before that can explain this for you. So I did this one time ago. So an invoice and receipt sorter from email. So what this essentially did was it looked at emails, right? It looked at my email inbox and at specific times. So I set this to daily, right? So you might have just one email, or this module might give you one email, or it might give you like 20 emails, right? So in the off chance that it gives you more than one email, this iterator is going to take that bundle of 10 emails and then it's going to go with one. The first email, and it's going to send it through the flow. The second email, it's going to send it through the flow. The third email, it's going to send it through the flow, and so on. Another example is this bookmaker, which shows it a little, which shows you this, the aggregator. So in here, it's going to be the same thing. So essentially, it's going to watch for emails, and it might have 5 emails, and you want all 5 of those emails to, in this case, what I wanted to do was take each of those emails and send them through ChatGPT and make some adjustments to some of the content in there, and then add it to a content log. And what this did was this array aggregator, it just essentially, at least for this, it essentially let me do all of that in a confined space. So it took one email, sent it through, done. Then it took the second email, sent it through, and done. So this collects all of it step by step, right? So because essentially I didn't want it to take one email and then go through the entire flow. What I wanted to happen here is it run through that whole set of emails, let's say 10 times. And then once it was done running it there for 10 times, then it continued with the rest of the flow. So this was basically a bookmaker. What if I just to explain what this flow is it reads multiple emails, takes a summary of each of those emails, saves it, and then it goes along with using the information from those emails for that day, the multiple emails, creates an article. So it creates an article based off of that information. So it's kind of like a day. I paused it, but basically what it did was it took information from multiple emails, took the articles, summarized those articles into one outline, and then takes that outline, creates a title, does some formatting, which I won't go over in this video, saves it as a document, and then takes that document, splits it based off of the pointers in the document, sends it through here with an iterator, right? So it's taking the document, taking the outline with, let's say, 5 different points, splits it into 5 different points, and sends each of those points through this system. That's what this section over here is doing. So it's taking each of those points, the iterator splits them, and then based off of the section, so it takes section 1, sends it through here to create a content section for a full article. So it takes the summary from the outline, that one section of summary from the outline, makes it into a full article segment, and then it repeats that. It repeats it through this entire flow for however many sections there were in the outline. And then I added a router in here. As you can see, this router would then, based on the filter, which is a random of 4 plus 1. So basically what this is doing is it's taking a random variable between 0 and 1, multiplying it by 4, and if that plus 1. So what I tried to do here was try to make a varied section. So it had a format that was different. So most of the time, 75% of the time, it is going to create a article with just a block of a paragraph, and then 25% of the time it's going to take that and change it into something that has bullet points. So essentially what this was doing is it was creating an article that had some paragraphs, many paragraphs, and occasionally it will have a bullet point formula, so it kind of gives it a bit of a variety. So that's essentially what this did. And I think this was probably the best case study I could have ever shown you to showcase an iterator, a router, and an aggregator. But let's go back. We've already spent too much time with it. All right, so I've already gone over how you schedule a sequence. So if you have an instant trigger, then you can set that as an instantly type of trigger, and then if it doesn't, then you would be scheduling it to either regular intervals, a specific day of the month, or even you can even do it as on demand. But either way, it's not going to be instant. It needs to be a webhook for it to be an instant trigger. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is the error handlers. The last thing I want to show you is the error handlers. And you can find that also in the flow control section. And there are 5 different error handlers on here. Simply put, the ones that you're going to be using most of the time is probably the break. So the reason you would use the break error handler is that if the module that it's connected to stops working for any specific reason in that flow, because again this is connected to applications outside of Make, so it's out of their control, and it's unfortunate, but sometimes things breaks and things don't work. Like the server might go down, or you might hit a rate limit, or let's say you call ChatGPT one too many times and you've run out of credits, and then they deny you because you ran out of credits for the moment, or something like that. So what the break does in that case is in the scenario when let's say this specific module stops working, this break module is going to hold on to the information that comes up to this point, and it's going to try calling that module again for so many number of times, the number of attempts and the interval between the attempts in minutes. So this specific break module that I'm showing you here is going to try for 3 times with a interval of 15 minutes each between, and just to make sure that the scenario keeps running. So if it fails the first time, it's going to wait, try it again. If it fails again, it'll wait for 15 minutes and try again. And if it works, it's just going to keep going and it'll be fine. So it's probably the one error handler that you're going to be using most of the time. It's safe to connect these to any outgoing applications. Ideally, you would connect one for every single one of these. But in this case, I just put it for my ChatGPT modules in this. But that's essentially what break does. As for the other ones, commit, let me see. Just going to go into error handlers and use the reference because honestly, they're a little confusing. So commit is, it just stops the scenario and then commits the changes. So basically it just doesn't go with the flow anymore after there's an error. It just stops it. I don't know why you would ever want to use that. Sometimes you would, but the ignore is make processes the rest of the bundle flow normally, and then the scenario ends as a success. It just ignores the error. So basically it just keeps going. If you just wanted to like keep the scenario going, just use resume instead, because with resume you can actually give it a variable. So like, let's say in this case I choose to resume and I connect resume to the blog over here, post ID, right? So because the output of the blog is a blogger is going to be a post ID. So in this case, if it's not going to do it, but let's say in this case it fails to do that, it fails to give you an output, you can simply just put in a variable in here, and then what it'll do is instead of giving an error, it's going to, if it fails, it's going to output the value that you put in here instead. You can see how this could be useful for if you let's say if you were using a module that was trying to reach out to a website to find some information on the website, and if by an error that fails, you could use the ignore module to give a response of no information detected or something along those lines. You could, I think that's a more appropriate way to make use of that error handling scenario. The ignore essentially just leaves it as an error, doesn't output anything from that module, and then keeps going. Sometimes you could take use of that as well. So in that case, what you would do is you could just go in here and click on set up a filter, connect your condition to the post ID and say equal to does not exist. That might essentially do the same thing as well. So in one case you would give an output, and in this case you would just see that there is no output. So either one, they're both kind of flexible. You could use either one, but yeah, that's pretty much what that is. And the last one, I don't think anyone ever wants to use. Sometimes you might. It's essentially just a rollback. So if it fails, it's just going to undo everything and just go all the way back. But the thing about this is it's not going to undo anything that was done on another application. All it's going to undo is whatever execution that happened in make. So it has its uses, but it's not really that functional, I would say. But some people might have a good use for it. Let me know, I guess. But I think that's about it. The very last thing I would want to show you is, if I go back into scenarios, it's basically how you organize your scenarios if you have multiple of them. So you would just create folders, and unfortunately there isn't a hierarchy of folders that you can create. It can get overwhelming very quickly. So all you can do is create a folder, name the folder and then drag and drop your scenarios into that folder, and you can't make a hierarchy of them, you can't categorize folders into different sections, you really can't do any of that. So that's one of the downsides to make.com. I think the folder organization deal is not the best, but at the very least you can sort it into folders, so I guess that's something. And that's it. I hope the information from this video was helpful. I have created a guide that you can make use of as well if you prefer reading. I have a written text that kind of goes through what I went through in the video as well, so the video and the guide will kind of complement each other. You can use either one, but yeah, so I hope that this will give you enough information to get yourself started with using make.com. And if you ever had any questions or problems, like while watching any of the videos that I've made on the scenarios in advance and probably in the future as well, then I think this video might be a good starting point for you in your make.com journey. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Of course, there's a wait list that's in the description as well. Take a look at that. It's for the community, and you'll get access to all of those blueprints that I keep mentioning about if you sign up for it, and you'll get it for free. Don't worry, the community is still in development, and so it's currently in a wait list. If you join the wait list, you get to join for free, and you have access to all the blueprints, so you can take advantage of that. And of course, you can use that to practice with your make.com skills that you've learned from today, right? So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one. Cheers.